Hello everyone and welcome to the World Chess Championship match between Magnus Carlsen. I'm only kidding. The World Chess Championship match still hasn't started and it's not between these two gentlemen, even though these are the two highest rated players in the world, Magnus Carlsen number 1 and Fabiano Caruana number 2. This is sort of a prelude to the World Chess Championship match where Magnus and Fabi are battling it out in the freestyle chess match, where the pieces are scrambled. As you can see here, they will face each other in a chess 960 match. And this is the first game that was played, and yeah. The title speaks for itself. You guys will have two really awesome pause the video moments where you will decide whether you belong in the same category, and those will be two incredibly difficult pause the video moments. So let's dive straight into it. 60 minutes per player. Magnus Carlsen with white opens with pawn to f4, and if anyone is interested, knight b3, knight to c3, and pawn to f4 are the top 3 engine recommendations. As usual, players get some time before the match to actually decide what their opening strategy will be, because of course you do not have openings here unless you are willing to learn all of the all of the 960 positions by heart, and then openings for each of those setups. So here pawn to f4 by Magnus, and Fabi goes knight to b6. We have knight to c3 and pawn to f5. It's very useful as you have the rook already on f1, and the castling in chess 960 is performed by just flipping the king over the rook once you move the queen and the bishop. Doesn't matter where the king and rook are placed, they always, king goes over the rook, and then the king will land on the same file, on the same square as it would in normal castling, and the rook would land on the normal square as it would in normal castling. So the rook would be on f8 and the king on g8. Similarly, if you castled queenside, the king would go to c8 and the rook would remain on d8. But that's only for this particular position. So you already know that, okay, if queen and bishop move, the king will go to g8, and you will have a very interesting position where you have already castled. You will probably play g6, have a strong dark square bishop, and that's what it's going to be about. Or maybe it's not. Knight to b3, we have knight to a6 by Fabi and pawn to d3. We have pawn to c6 and now bishop to e3, saying, okay, I'm ready to capture on b6, maybe, even though that means giving up the bishop pair, but it could be, worth it for a pawn. Let's say we trade here, you trade here, queen comes to b6, something like knight a5 goes after the pawn on b7. Could, have some merit to it. And Fabi strikes with pawn to g5, saying, okay, if you want to count pawns, you, good Sir Magnus, are welcome to do so. Magnus plays f captures on g5, and Fabi grabs the center with pawn to e5, preparing pawn to d5, maybe. That would be interesting if that was the plan, because the king is still on e8. Okay, pawn to g4 by Magnus and pawn to f4, chasing away the bishop, and while Magnus could tuck it away with the d2 or maybe f2, he decides to give up the bishop pair. Bishop captures, pawn captures, queen captures on b6, and now queen captures on g5, and not just knight a5, going after the pawn on b7. And the trick is, even though you can capture on g6, it's very easy to forget that white can just castle here. You could also just attack the queen, but also just castles queenside, and look at this position. If you saw this, the b7 pawn really weak, the king in the center of the board, rooks are ready to be employed, the bishop incredibly strong. This would be winning in the hands of one Magnus Carlsen. So after knight a5, we have castles kingside by Fabi, and now bishop to e4. Putting pressure on that h7 pawn, and pay attention to the bishop on e4, and you will see just what are the ramifications of it just being there, for the later part of the game. We have queen to h4 check. You could also capture on g4 now, but then rook to g1. I know you guys forgot about our good friend the queen on b6. So after bishop to e4, queen to h4 with check, and Magnus just goes king to d2. Even though this is chess 960, Magnus still doesn't just castle. He will castle artificially via king d2, king to c1. We have queen back to e7, and now bishop to f5, putting even more pressure. There's no rush. You don't have to capture on b7 right away. Knight to c5 by Fabi, and now knight to e4. And the question is, should you capture on e4? Well, it's a very interesting line that I'm going to show, because this is a classical game, but just how deep Magnus goes into the position. For example, knight captures, pawn captures, and d5, because why wouldn't you? Now king to c1, and if d captures on e4, what's the point? Well, now the point is the bishop on f5, like we discussed. And now look at this, queen b3 check, Queen f7, you're going to trade on d8, rook captures on d8, rook captures, and now bishop captures on h7. The queen cannot capture, and if the king captures, you lose the queen. So you have to play king to f8, and now you just grab some material like bishop captures on e4, and okay, we could play bishop captures on g4. Fabi would also grab material, knight captures on b7, as the b7 pawn is defended, and now let's say queen captures on b3, a captures, and something like rook to b8. You will move the knight, and then okay, you can capture another pawn. It's a very forced line because there are captures, and after let's say rook e1, you will move the bishop. But now the problem is, even though it's only Magnus would be only up one pawn, he could easily activate the rook, and well, Fabi will not have many chances to activate this dark square bishop, like bishop h3, rook can come to g6, and now the knight, bishop, and the rook will do, well, wonders for Magnus here, and it's big trouble for Fabi. So knight to e4 by Magnus is just, you know, he didn't calculate, of course, all of that, but he sensed it, or maybe he even calculated it, I have no idea. But Fabi goes knight e6, that is by far the best move. We have bishop captures on e6 with check, queen captures, and now knight captures on b7. Bishop captures and queen captures on b7, and now rook to b8. Fabi now ready to go after the b2 pawn. Magnus goes queen c7, and the rook captures on b2. And this is the beauty of this game that I find. I mean, this is just amazing. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only winning idea for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on looking very, very deep into the position. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to b1. It's such a spectacular move that makes rook to b7 unstoppable. And the point is, after, let's say, you capture, even though Fabi did not play this, and let's say you go bishop g7, because that bishop has to be activated somehow. The problem is, after rook to b7, there's no way to defend the pawn, and then you just break through, and then, you know, you just march the a-pawn up the board and win the game. And, of course, if rook f7, knight g5 with a very nice fork. So there's none of that. So after rook to b1, queen captures on a2 was played by Fabi, now threatening rook captures on c2, Magnus traded on b2, and now queen captures on d7. And okay, the white king is also sort of wide in the open, but not as much as the black king. Queen to b4 with check, pawn to c3, only winning idea. Queen to b2 check, we have king to e1, and now bishop to g7, and now comes another interesting maneuver. Queen to e6 check, king to h8, and now rook f3. And once you see rook f3, you know, you sort of realize the horror of your reality. Rook to h3 is coming, knight to g5 is coming, and how are you stopping that? Fabi played queen to c1 with check, king to f2 by Magnus, now queen to h1, and now just rook to h3. Nicely defending the pawn. Fabi goes f3, and it looks very dangerous, but the f3 square is defended sufficiently, so Magnus just captures it. Even though this opens up the second rank for Fabi to use to attack Magnus's king, rook to b8, and now again there is only one move that you know, is completely winning for Magnus. Feel free to pause the video and try to find this just a obnoxious idea while I give you a couple of seconds. If you found this one, then you are you know, you are definitely 2750 material, maybe even 2800, because these two guys are 2800 and over. If you found this, you know, hats off to you. I mean, absolutely incredible. Pawn to g5. And, you know, once you see it, you still don't believe it. Like, what is pawn to g5? Surely you don't have time for something like pawn to g6. I mean, you just don't believe in that. There's no way that is the idea. The idea is that after rook to b2 check, you're going to get checkmated. Or rather, if you didn't play g5, let's say you just play queen f5, you want to checkmate the black king. Look at this, rook b2 check, king to g3, queen e1 check, only move is to block with the knight, and after knight f2, queen captures and f2 with checkmate. So what the g5 does, it just frees up the g4 square for the white king, and then you can go king g4, king to f5, and beyond. Rook to b2 check by Fabi, king to g3, and now queen e1 check doesn't work because you just go to g4, and after rook to g2 check, you just go king f5. No more checks, no more nothing. Next, you're getting checkmated. So Fabi tried one last idea, queen to g1 with check. Magnus played king h4, and now rook to b8, stopping any back rank ideas. But now Magnus ends it with a beautiful knight to d6, and he was in this position on move 32 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. What is the threat here? Of course, you see it, I'm sure I don't have to explain it to you, but I will, just in case you're having a bad day. Point is that, let's say you give a check, king goes somewhere, and now, okay, you play whatever. Let's say you play h6 because, okay, you want to free up a square for your king. The threat is knight f7 check, and after you move the king, now you push the king back, and after the king goes back, now the classic smothered mate. Knight captures with a double check. If you go here, it's just queen f7 checkmate. If you go here, then we sacrifice the queen, rook captures and g8 only move, and knight to f7 will be checkmate. Now, for those of you who are maybe new to chess, this looks like a complicated maneuver, but when Fabi saw knight to d6, or rather Fabi saw it probably 10 moves ago, he knew what was what, and of course here he resigned the game. So yeah, first game of the freestyle chess match, Carlsen versus Caruana. The second game actually starts in 15 minutes, as I'm recording this quite late. Was played yesterday, so sorry about that. But I thought maybe, okay, I skip it. I start from game 2. But when I saw the game, I'm like, yes, this is beautiful classical chess. Even though I know your feelings, some of you are not really into chess 960. But I always say, once you play a few moves and you castle, it's pretty much the same thing, and then we just enjoy very, very strong chess. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll probably cover game 2, and then I'm gonna make a video explaining everything regarding the World Chess Championship match. No worries there. It is coming, and hopefully, I will answer all of your questions. So I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Frank W.H. Schaefer, Jeffrey Johnson, Joseph Evelyn, Dan McCormick, and David Gasparian for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check upon your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.